Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk. Today we're going to discuss the utterly viral Studio Ghibli AI phenomenon, and we have with us today three super talented artists. I'll begin with the beautiful Plavie. So Plavie, you're the founder of the Maker Social, and you recently hosted a Studio Ghibli inspired art workshop. Was it a sort of protest against the Ghiblification of the AI Ghiblification? What was it about?
So yeah, is it a protest? A little bit, but I have been a Ghibli fan as long as I can remember, and I am fascinated by the visions of Hayao Miyazaki, and the Ghibli movies always felt like a warm, fuzzy hug for me. So I was always inclined to that genre of anime. And I have thoroughly enjoyed all the movies. I wanted people to have an experience of how it feels like to create something with our emotions in our hands. And also, I am not totally against AI because we have to adapt with the modern advancements, and we live in a fast-paced world. So to be able to survive, we have to adapt. So I feel yes, we should coexist, and people should watch the Ghibli movies and understand why they're so special. So yeah, I like the idea of Kiki being that brave little cute witch who sets on to win the world with her new ideas, and yeah.
Thanks. And Abhishek, now I come to you. Abhishek Choudhury is a well-known illustrator and designer, and he has an interesting take on AI. He believes AI is a tool for critical dialogue and experimentation. But Abhishek, is it ethical to use AI to create new Studio Ghibli content, considering that they don't have the consent of the original creators and the original creators have not been involved? So how do you respond to the ethics of this art?
That's again a very big question, and again, I don't come as any kind of spokesperson. I do not have any kind of legal authority to comment on any of these things, but for Miyazaki especially, I think he has all the right in the world to sue Sam Altman and the other companies for using his work without his consent, and I think he can get like a nice payday out of it. But like for me, like as a designer, as an artist, it's like rather than jumping on a bandwagon is for me to actually find out for myself like what is this tool really, right? But then it has also allowed the opportunity for a lot of people to express and to create, right? Because art is something which is much more larger than just than just working with your hands, and we've been having this discussion more in the past 20th century, right? Because creativity is here. All of these things don't have to be mutually exclusive, right?
Right.
Like I know people who are great at writing, right? But they also want to create images, right? And they've always felt limited by that, handicapped by this lack of an ability to draw. And these are people I know, I admire, and they also admire art and artists, and they also realize the fact that for me to sort of have these things come into visual form, because it does help us.
Yeah.
It costs money, right? You have to pay someone, and because you respect an artist, you cannot pay them pennies for that, right? So what this tool has enabled them is to like quickly prototype certain ideas, right? And that I feel is not a bad thing. People are still creating, right? And creation should not stop.
So what do you say about the control part of this AI inspired art?
It's a larger question that we need to ask about this impact that AI is going to have on all of us, right? Right now, companies are in an arms race to see who's going to get the best AI out of it, right? And we are kind of like horses in this, with our blinders on, we're just looking at, no one is looking at the macro side of the thing, right? What are the larger impacts that can have? And here we have a tool which is so advanced, which is evolving so fast for people to cope up to it, right? In the past, we've had technologies which come disrupt the market. When industrial revolution happened, it also put a lot of people out of their jobs. But over time, people found ways to sort of navigate their way through this thing. It's already wreaked havoc on our, like, I'm sure you all know personally probably a few people who got scammed in the past 6-7 months, right? That puts us in a very difficult spot as people.
Amalendu is a filmmaker and an animator and the founder of Zeng. So Amalendu, welcome to Let's Talk. What I want to ask you is really simple. Art has always survived and found its own way. And before we had printmaking, and yet painting survived. And photography also came in, yet people paint. So art has always survived. So what do you think is art all about, and will it survive this AI trend?
Yeah, I feel like the future is always human, and we are only building it for that, right? So no matter how much technology it comes, it boils down to just human doing human stuff, right? And yes, AI is there to stay in a capitalist market, like, of course, the commodification of every aspect will be there in every industry, and that's the main essence of it. So I think the art in general is there to stay, no matter how much of AI technology cuts our redundancy of skill or whatever. But I feel like it's there to stay, and people adapt. And as they also say, the traditional media is going to stay for sure. And this is how we're going to evolve.
Absolutely. In the 2013 film, Studio Ghibli film, The Wind Rises, I think there was a crowd scene that took almost an year to sort of put together, and because Miyazaki had said that even though it's a crowd, individual faces also matter, and the individual details also matter, and he was absolutely against computer graphics. So iman je labor intensive hoy aru iman koshtokor eta process hoy, it's somewhere in this trending business. Have we sort of not focused on that fact that it is so labor intensive that art is really difficult?
I feel it's the process which the artists enjoy the most. Animation is everything but animation. What I mean is, it's actually life, right? If you are not experiencing life, you cannot animate. Because what Miyazaki also says in a lot of interviews is, don't animate the characters, animate the people, animate life. Right? If you have not experienced life, you will not be able to tell a good story.
Plavie, a lot of people also feel that art has become accessible with this AI version of Studio Ghibli, and agote jure Studio Ghibli kotha hoyto iman jana nasile. They're also using this, and Miyazaki has really become cool and popular. So how do you respond to this?
So the thing is, if I go back to why I must have watched a Ghibli movie for the first time, it's maybe because the aesthetics kind of drawed me in. And it's a very cute aesthetic. So I think the trend is popular because of the cuteness of the Ghibli aesthetic. But if now people are interested to watch a Ghibli movie, then I am very happy about that, because Ghibli movies are a beautiful vision. It is like a beautiful painting.
Abhishek, I want to address the question of insecurity that artists, some of us have, and they think that perhaps this AI trend is going to overtake the essential aesthetics of art. Do you think that's true, or what's going to happen?
Answer to this thing is like, see, I see a lot of people talking about in very doomsday scenario kind of things like art is dead, artists are dead, it's over. It's not. Art is going to be around. It's going to be around because it's a larger philosophical concept rather than just taking a pencil and sketching. When photography came around, a lot of people immediately saw that this is going to be the end of artists, right? Because until then, artists were making just portraits, right? And that was filling a certain gap which was in the industry. But photography came and took over that portrait part of things. Did it kill art though, right? Instead, it emerged as a separate form of art. Right? Photography is an art form in itself, and what it helped was also push artists out of the comfort zone into really asking themselves, like, what is it that makes us human? Like, what is it that we can do that a camera can't do? Right? A camera can't show you inside, right? It can't show you your feelings. It can't show you the abstract emotions that we feel, and that is how the 20th century was one of the most dynamic centuries for art, and how it evolved during that time, right? The kind of movements we had in such a short span of time, right? And I think it's a similar kind of a time that we are in right now, and I just feel like, yes, the insecurity is real because art is a very insecure industry, right? It is a very volatile industry. There is no kind of security in terms of jobs and everything, and this brief moment in time that we had since the invention of digital art and the social media, when artists actually started getting a lot of attention, and a lot of people were getting into recognition, platforms were available, this kind of thing comes in. So obviously the fear is legit, but thing is, I feel we need to sort of overcome this and use this thing as a point for us to move forward and ask ourselves, really, if AI can do all these things, what can we do? What makes us unique? It's not an easy question, but take this time to reflect on that, and do not think that this is over. Do not think that there is no point in making art anymore, right? It always has a point. Find that point, define that point for yourself, and you will have that edge that you're looking for. It's not a comparison. Like AI art and you are not competitors. If you go to compete, we will obviously lose.
So Amalendu, I want to ask you about the art education bit. There's a Amalendu system of education asset that the art is just another subject, and it's not a subject that has a lot of emphasis in school, and no wonder a lot of us are not artists. So A to address kinike koribo pari je ami without boxing students into categories, like how do you open it up?
So I feel like art education in general in our country is very different from rest of the countries, say Europe or Korea or Japan. I feel like they get exposed to art, aesthetic, and in general the awareness of colors, shapes, forms, culture is even more organized and deliberate. Well, in our country, not that I'm complaining about how our system of culture is, but I feel it's a bit more scattered. So I think it need to be a little bit reiterated to so that this education system also adapts. It becomes easier to adapt. I mean, like for us, when we're growing up in school, I feel like if art education have been a little bit more organized,
or nuanced also.
Or nuanced, or even in terms of skills also, in terms of exposure. सबसे important is the exposure, I feel like, which I got in college.
Yeah.
Because I did design in my college degree. The 4 years was just exposure, and that helped me a lot to get exposed to the whole art scene. But when I see now in the industry when I'm working on, and I see the youth who are adapting to art and looking to the industry to work in this, I feel like there's a huge gap in the market as well in terms of art education, because the exposure was less when they were in their moldable form.
Yeah.
Right? Because once you're out of the college, you just need to grab the pen and work for the paycheck, right? You don't have much time to get exposed. So what happens? Your exposure duration is very less. So you just focus on the skills. So that's where the emotional gaps also there. All those other aspects get lost, and you become like a skilled labor.
Yeah.
Instead of a thinker, a creative. Like creativity is all about thinking and expressing, right? So I think those things is a big gap, I think, which we need to relook.
I think that's a very good point you have raised also, because I think when you define art education, is also our idea about that is very limited. We just think of it like make some students sit in a row and ask them to draw. Drawing is not equal to art, right?
Exactly.
Art is more about a way of thinking, a way of understanding and perceiving the world. That larger conversations, the exposure needs to happen, right? How do you make it accessible to the masses, right? To the larger school of people. I think on here I would like to give a shout out to this one organization, the Ongo Art Collective.
Yeah.
They have been doing this thing called No School, where they have been imparting art-related education and art-related experimental kind of teachings to kids from the villages. They're based somewhere in Rani side, and they've been doing these experiments there. And I think that's a very good way to start.
Absolutely, Plavie. I believe you're already working on art education, especially for adults, who've never sort of drawn in their life. So how do you make art more interesting for them?
So I never intended of doing something like that, but since my respect and awareness for art, and my ideology of art as a time capsule of your emotions and feelings, and using the tools like paints and brushes to actually capture your emotions onto a canvas. They are just here to understand and enjoy art because it is enjoyable. It is very relaxing, it is very therapeutic, because I personally enjoy just making a random painting when I'm stressed out. So I teach them that, and I teach them how to articulate their thoughts and expressions, thoughts and emotions into a canvas. And whenever they look at that painting, they should feel happy, and they should remember about that particular day that they made that painting.
Lovely. I
So
think
for me,
we'll
it's that.
end on that note, and I'm really glad that we had this question about making art accessible, but I believe all three of you are doing exactly that, making art accessible and telling us all about what art means and how we should look at art, or the different ways of looking at it. So thank you so much for being here with us today. It was
you
an
for having
absolute
us.
pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.